handshake. It's good to see you. Good to see you.
When did you get in, by the way?
I got in a few hours ago. Yeah.
Literally?
Yeah. I was in Vancouver last night.
Well, let me be the first to welcome you.
You are the first to welcome me.
Quite literally.
What a pleasure to be back. It's always so good to see you. We got a lot to talk about, obviously. Speaking of Golden Gate, I think you gave me these socks last time. So, you know, maybe someone
still
did
doing
anyway.
those socks.
Well, you know what?
What have you ever been caught with black socks on? I mean, is that
That would be just too embarrassing. Listen, so much to talk about on climate, on.
That's Justin Trudeau. Like he's a hollow man. He's an empty suit, and his jokes from 2015 and 16 are a little bit stale. But I just wanted to show the two of them together because I think that Gavin Newsom, as president, would be very similar to Justin Trudeau. Nothing but messaging, disastrous all around, and a friend of China. Help me understand what's going on with Gavin Newsom. He went to China. He had a one-on-one meeting with Xi Jinping. That's got to be arranged with the assistance of the State Department. And then Xi Jinping and Joe Biden get together. Tell me, I want to talk more about Gavin Newsom in a minute, but tell me about what looks like a warm spring this fall for the Chinese dictatorship in the eyes of Joe Biden. What's going on with Xi Jinping? Don't mind me on my Gavin McInnes and Trudeau sock story. I just wanted to wedge that in there. But what's going on with Xi Jinping? Is he being welcomed back into America's good books or something?
Well, it certainly appears that way. The Gavin Newsom trip to China, and then, of course, Xi Jinping coming to the Bay Area, Gavin Newsom's territory. The China trip itself, to me, smacks of a shadow campaign. And the fact that Gavin Newsom also met with Prime Minister Trudeau, I think, is further indicative of the fact that beyond, he would argue, well, look, California is a massive state. It's a powerful state. So, of course, I'm going to meet with heads of other nations. The reality is that Gavin Newsom is positioning himself as one of the alternates to Joe Biden. I also think Governor Gretchen Whitmer thinks of herself probably as another potential fill-in. I've long held that I believe that a cognitively compromised as well, Joe Biden is potentially not long for this race. It doesn't mean that this switcheroo is going to happen necessarily now. I've seen those reports and indicating that in the DNC's rules, essentially, that in smoke-filled rooms, effectively the party can replace the leader should he step aside. You could have a brokered Democrat convention. Certainly wouldn't put it past it. Wouldn't put it past the Democrats to do that. Who the figure is, we'll have to see. There's some identity politics issues to be worked out. How are they going to sidestep Kamala Harris, for example, another California figure there? That's ought to be worked out, and we'll see what happens with the palace intrigue in the months ahead. But as for China, Xi Jinping himself, and by all accounts, communist China's economy is struggling. They have real issues. So naturally, what are America's leaders doing? Well, they're trying to potentially provide China a lifeboat. You had many members of major corporations come and speak with Xi Jinping and impress upon him that American business leaders are souring on China. We need to reopen this relationship. Business leaders have always been the preeminent agents of influence, essentially, and mouthpieces for the Chinese Communist Party. It's how they impact U.S. policy, in large part historically. The Biden administration desperately, it seems, wants to reopen relations with communist China and try to find different areas in which we can somehow work together, because we need to cool down the temperature is the rationale. And so, of course, ironically, the green agenda is probably the most important agenda from the Biden administration's perspective, next to, I guess, reopening military to military communications, as if those communications won't be exploited by communist China. The first sort of leg of this new romance between Xi and Biden was this so-called fentanyl deal, whereby supposedly China, which I would argue is engaged in a new opium war, essentially chemical or biological warfare against the West, by being the key producer of the chemicals behind fentanyl, then actually created in Mexico and exported to the US and elsewhere. China says it's going to clamp down on these essentially death factories that have been killing tens of thousands of Americans a year, in effect. It's going to shut down those companies, those factories, in exchange for the US pulling off of a Commerce Department blacklist an entity of China's domestic national security and intelligence apparatus, which had been blacklisted for its complicity, allegedly, in Xinjiang Uyghur repression. So this is a gulag-focused entity of the Chinese Communist Party. And so turning off the killing machines, this national security apparatus entity gets the benefit of being able to import U.S. technologies, once again, is reportedly the deal. That shows you that blackmail and extortion works if you're communist China. And this is being presented as the first step in a thaw in relations, and that this is imperative to end the rockiness between the two powers from the U.S. perspective, and I guess forestall an invasion of Taiwan. But there's zero sign that Xi Jinping will not invade Taiwan. There's every sign that, as always, China will use the West's burning desire to want to negotiate and come to some deals to exploit them, lie, cheat, and steal in connection with those deals, and ultimately ruthlessly pursue its perceived interests. That is where we stand right now. Maybe there's also an election year element to this of Joe Biden realizes how weak he looks on communist China, so he's looking for some kind of out here, but I don't think it's going to be met. And instead, unfortunately, you're going to have China likely trying to play a much bigger role, for example, in the Middle East and with Iran as well, and maybe try to serve as a quote unquote mediator. So all of this will be disastrous for the West. And again, if you're in Taiwan, I have to think you're praying that there's no invasion over the next year, but there are many signals to indicate to me that there might never be a better time from the CCP's perspective to do something really provocative and seize Taiwan, which has always been, I think, Xi Jinping's desired crowning achievement.